So we have 2 minutes to start, but I will exploit these 2 minutes to introduce myself to those who don't know me. Some of you may not know me. I am Zanyar Faiq. I have PhD in English literature, and currently I am the chairperson of the Department of English. So I will be pleased to be with you today, and together we will be talking about a very interesting subject which we will need in our daily life. Every minute we are using it, whether we know it or not. So the subject of this seminar is about persuasion. I deliberately use the word suasion because later on we will discover why. The common word which is common among people is persuasion, but we have also a word which is suasion, and I have my reason to use it in the title in this way. So today's subject is about persuasion. In today's seminar, we have some learning outcomes. I hope that by the end of this seminar, we will master them, know about them, be able to talk about them to other people, and to understand it in a better way for our daily life. The first thing that we will know about today is what rhetoric is, which is one of the key terms in the title. Another important thing is what is communication process, because this is at the heart of what we are talking about today. Then what is meant by a signaling system? We will also briefly talk about signaling system. We also talk about encoder and decoder. What is encoder, or who is encoder, and what is decoder and who is decoder? Another important thing we will talk about is the father of rhetoric, who is the man who organized these ideas into this systematic way. And then we will talk about categories of proof. What are the types and categories and classes of proof that we can use in order to persuade people? So let us see what is meant by rhetoric. Like most of the words in any language, any word has a common use and a specialized use. Rhetoric is not an exception. We use rhetoric in English language in our daily life to describe a kind or a type of speech which we think is meaningless and empty. We say it is mere rhetoric. Usually when we hear people giving us a lot of promises and telling us that they are going to do so and so for us, and we know we have experienced them, we know that they will not keep their words. We say that what they say is what? Mere rhetoric. It's empty speech. It does not have any sense. As they say in Egypt, kalam farigh, right? So it is mere rhetoric. This is used in common daily life. But rhetoric has specialized uses as well. Traditionally, the word rhetoric, when we study the history of rhetoric, we see that it is related to the use of figures of speech. Those who are specialized in literature know what is meant by figures of speech, but I will simplify it to those who are not specialized in literature. Figures of speech are pictures created through the use of words. Painters use paint. Writers, poets use words. So figure of speech is basically a comparison between two things which are basically different. You compare two things to one another which are basically different, you create a figure of speech. Of course, there are different types of figures of speech. As you see, we have metaphor, we have simile, we have personification, metonymy, synecdoche, hundreds of them. We have an example to simplify this. For example, we say the good people are the salt of the earth. Here in this sentence, there is a figure of speech, which is metaphor. In it, the speaker compares two things which are basically different. Human beings are compared to what? To the salt of earth. What's the point of similarity between them? Both are good. Both give taste to food, give taste to life, right? That is the point of similarity. This is what is meant traditionally by rhetoric. Today we are going to focus on rhetoric related to this meaning. That is how language is used to give speeches how language is used to compose, to write, in an influential, effective way that makes people believe in what you are saying or what you are writing. So it is about speech and composition. That's giving speeches or writing something. Basically, rhetoric is used for some purposes. It could be used to inform people. It could be used to persuade people. And it could be used to dissuade people. Now you see why I used suasion in the title. Because we can use rhetoric to make people do something, believe in something, say something, or to make them not to do something, not to say something, not to believe in something. If it is positive, we say persuade. If it is negative, we say dissuade. That's why I use the word suasion in the title, because it includes both. Okay, to understand what's meant by rhetoric and how it works, we have to understand what's meant by communication process. Communication process is at the heart of our daily life. We are doing it every time through talking face-to-face, exchanging emails, texts, calling one another. It could be verbal, it could be non-verbal. So let us see what is meant by communication process, what are its elements, and we should be aware about sending a message about these details. Whenever we send a message to a person, and any kind of message, we must be aware of these details. First of all, what is communication process? It is the process of transmitting and receiving information. You send some information, the information is received by the other side. This is called, there's a place here, Doctor. It is called communication process. Okay, as it is clear from this slide, it is transmission and reception of what? Of something which is what? Information. Technically, we call it message. In the communication process, we tell it what? We call it message. From whom? From a source. Source is the technical term for the sender, for the addresser, the one who sends the message. To whom? To a receiver. Addressee, the one who receives the message. How? Through a signaling system. Without having a signaling system, you cannot send messages to anyone. Via what? Via a channel. There must be a channel. For example, you may send a message through a written letter. So the written letter is the medium, the channel of transmitting, sending your message. It could be what? Through a telephone call. It could be through an email. It could be through what? A sign. When I say to you, for example, like this, I am sending you a message through my facial or body expression, body language. So the medium could be different things. It is not only written. Why? Every communication process must have a purpose. Every message has a purpose behind it. You must know what's the purpose of your message. In some books about writing, about composition, this process also is called the rhetorical situation. If you read books about writing, how to write good essays, this communication process has another name. It is also called what? The rhetorical situation. What is the rhetorical situation? There is always a sender, there is a receiver, there is a message, there is a purpose, there is a medium. You should know when you write an essay what role you should assume, you should take. For example, your teacher asks you to write a persuasive essay. So your role as a writer is to persuade. That's the purpose. Your teacher asks you to write an essay about opinion, give your opinion, whether you agree or not. So your role is to give your opinion. You should know what is the purpose of this message. That is why whenever you send a message, whether it is small or big, you should know about all these details so that you may not fall into mistakes. Okay. Theoretically, ideally, communication occurs when the information sent is exactly the same as the information received. We say this is perfect communication. Ideally, this is ideal, this is theoretical, it does not occur all the time. Why? Because there is something called, in all communication, there is something called noise. And noise could be so many different things. For example, now we are in a communication process. I am the sender, you are the receiver. I have a message to talk about the art of persuasion. That's my purpose, to make you know about it. But outside there may be people working, right? They may produce some noise that make you unable to receive my message clearly. Another problem, which I find actually in some, not most, in some of our email communications, is that the language written contains spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, choice of wrong words. So this is a kind of noise that makes the receiver unable to get the message completely. So we say ideally, if the information sent is exactly the same as information received, that's perfect communication, but this is not always the case. As it is clear from this diagram, we have a source always to send a message. He has a message to send. He will encode it. I will talk about code and encoding and decoding very shortly. He encodes the message and he chooses a channel. I have a message, I want to send it to someone. I choose written letter to be the medium. You choose a telephone call, whatever. And the message will be received by whom? By the receiver, but he will decode it. He will decode it. Okay, how can you, as a sender, as an addresser, as a source, code a message? And how can I, as a receiver, decode it? There must be some rules, right? Okay, let us see what are these rules. But there is something very important, actually, which is what at the bottom, context. Each communication process happens in a context. For example, if I ask any one of you, how's Komar? The context of the communication means I mean the university, right? But if I go to my aunt's house and I ask her how's Komar, I mean my cousin Komar, okay? Because the context is what is different. So the context helps you a lot to get to understand the message in a good way. Okay, signaling system. We said that there must be a signaling system to communicate. Without it, you cannot communicate. What is a signaling system? Any system which uses signs. Any system which uses signs can be called what? A signaling system. In perhaps the most common signaling system that we use in our daily life is human language. Words and sentences, expressions, whatever. This is the most common type of sign, words of language. Because in linguistics, in the sign of language, we don't call words words, we call them what? Signs. Words to us as people specialized in language, we call them signs, we use them to signal to something or use them as a signaling system. Colors could be what? Signs, especially in the traffic light. We have three major colors. Whenever we see one of them, we know what is the message, right? If it is green, the message is you may go. If it is red, you cannot go, right? So colors are signs that send messages to people. All the traffic signposts and road signs are what? Signaling systems. They are a system that sends us signals to behave in a specific way while we are driving. Animal sound system. The sounds that are used by different species of animals. For example, cats have specific types of sounds. They produce it in different situations, right? When they are angry, they produce a specific sound. When they are in need of food, they produce another sound. This is also a signaling system between them and also with us. They communicate with us in one way or another. At the university, we are using a specific type of language, which we call it professional language, professional communication. For example, when I talk to my students about literature, there are certain words, terms, expressions that I use. People outside this field, they will not understand it. Okay? For example, in the discipline of pharmacy, they have their own professional language. They communicate with one another using that signaling system. our body expressions, the language of deaf and mute, your facial expression, these are all signaling systems that they are sending messages to the other side. Okay. You cannot use a signaling system if you don't know the code of that signaling system. What is code? Simply, it is a set of rules shared among a community, shared among a group of people. For example, I am now talking in English, right? This is a signaling system. But if I don't know the rules of grammar, the rules of pronunciation, the rules of spelling, for example, if I write, I cannot use that signaling system. So there is a signaling system and there are rules that control that system. For example, in English they say if you express or if you produce a statement, you should, the structure is SVO, that is subject, verb, object. If I use this code, I can send you a message using English language. But if the code is not mastered by the sender, by the source, he cannot use the signaling system. This is true to all signaling systems. There are certain rules. We use them to combine signs together. In language, the signs are words, right? In other signaling systems, it could be colors, it could be any kind of expression. Why do we use codes to put signs together? What is the purpose? To send a message, to communicate a message to other side. That is why if you and me do not have the same set of codes about this language, which is English, we will not be able to communicate. Yes. Did you get what I said? Yes? Because you don't have the signaling system and you don't have the code as well, right? So when we talk to one another, there must be a system that combines us. That system is what is the codes of that signaling system. In mathematics, there are certain codes they use among themselves, they understand. In chemistry, in physics, in geology, in all disciplines, there are codes. What are these codes? Conventions. These are rules agreed upon by the members of that community to control their signaling system. Without the codes, if, for example, imagine that you have 1 million vocabulary of English in your mind. What's the use of it if you don't know the rules of grammar? If you don't know how to pronounce the words? If you don't know right spelling? You don't have the code, you cannot use it. That is very important in any signaling system. Who encodes the source? I use the rules, the code, to prepare a message and send it to you. So the encoder is the sender. The decoder is the receiver. You are decoders now. When I say something, you receive it in your mind. You use the same codes, the same rules of English grammar and English rules. You decode, you analyze my speech, you understand it. Okay. Now we come to the father of this system or this kind of field of knowledge, which is rhetoric. Why he is called the father? Because he is the first person who studied speeches to find its elements. What did he do? He did not invent rhetoric. He did not devise it from his mind. In ancient Greeks and Romans, that's about 2,000 years ago, they were famous, very famous of what people giving speeches for different purposes. For example, I believe that a certain rule must be changed. So you should go up in public and give a speech and persuade them that this current rule is bad, the substitute is, or the alternative one is good. For example, there is a statue. They don't know where to put it. I say put it in front of the temple. So I must give a speech to persuade the people that putting it in front of the temple is good. These people were called orators. Orators. They were good at giving speeches, persuading their audience, making them do what they like. What did Aristotle do? He studied these speeches by these orators, and he came to the conclusion that this process, which is called communication or rhetoric, has three major categories of proof. They use three types of proof to persuade the audience. Let us see what are they. Categories of proof, that is classes or different types of proof. The first one is logos, and this is, I think it is a common word. The word logic comes from logos. And the word logos has many meanings. One of its meanings is word. It could also mean language. And the Arabic word lugha is the same as log, because in English we say dialogue. That's a speech between more than two people or between people. So log could mean language. But here, by logos, he means our mind, our brain, reason, logic. That's why I put this picture. You use your brain to persuade people. Let us see how. How is this used, and who are the people whom mostly use this kind of proof to persuade their audience, their readers? This kind of proof focuses on the message. You know what's the message? What is said, what is sent, what is written. This is the information that you want to get across to the other side. So the focus, if you use the logos, your focus is on what? Your focus is on your message, not on you, the sender, not on the receiver. It is on what you are telling them. In logos, the speaker or the sender, the source, let us say, uses facts, statistics, okay? Things which are the result of experiments, of tests. Who uses this kind of proof mostly? Academics. We at university, teachers and researchers, mostly when we write a research, we don't say we believe that this is good. No, we say we did this experiment, or this experiment has been done, this result has been gained. We talk about what? Facts, numbers, figures, statistics that we found. This is used mostly by academic people to persuade the other side that what they say is right. I hope this is clear. Okay. Ethos is the other kind of proof. And the word ethos means personality or character. The focus here is on what? On the sender, on the addresser, on the source. It means the source is used as a kind of proof to say that what he says is right. This is sometimes compared to what is called authority. Authority. Okay, let me give you an example. You are a father, for example. You have a son. You don't like the way that he dresses. You say, oh, my son, you should not dress in this way. He says, okay, father, why? You answer him, you say, I am your father, I know better. Okay, did you give any logical reason? Is there any logical reason in that? You said, I am your father, I know better. So you used your personality, your character, to prove to him that what you say is right. But there is no logic, no reason. You did not argue with him by giving him what? Facts and reasons, no. For example, they say, this poem is written by Sherko Bekas. Okay, the name Sherko Bekas means what? That this poem must be great. That's why some people, as long as they hear that the writer is Sherko Bekas, they think that the poem is great. They say, for example, this poem is written by Shakespeare. So Shakespeare seems to be the greatest writer in the world, so what he writes must be always right. But that is not logical. Perhaps he writes something very bad. You have to analyze using logic, using facts. But if you say, because it is written by Sherko Bekas, it must be great, you are using what? This kind of proof which focuses on the sender, on the source. Appeal to personality. Okay. Is there anyone who does not know Messi? Messi seems to be the paragon, the best example of what? Of a healthy, successful athlete, right? But he is advertising for what? For Pepsi and Coca-Cola, which we all know is not healthy, right? So what does this picture send, and what message does it send to people? It sends to the people the message that Messi is the character. He's the one who sends the message. He's successful, he's healthy, he has a good physique. He seems to be the best football player, and he drinks what? Coca-Cola. There is no problem with Coca-Cola. You see? He is the best who cares for himself and his physique, but he drinks Coca-Cola or Pepsi, so it seems that there is nothing wrong with it. In another advertisement, he and Mohamed Salah, also a very famous, successful footballer, they are competing over a can of Pepsi. Unfortunately, another man comes and takes the can. So they are left with nothing to drink. What do? The end of the advertisement is both of them. As you see, it's not very clear, but these are Messi and Mohamed Salah running after what? The truck, Pepsi truck, to get one. So this sends a message that Pepsi is not bad because very successful people are drinking it. You see the idea of using the character to persuade people? But if we study Pepsi and its ingredients, we see that it contains things which are very bad for our health. Okay, what is pathos? It is a proof which tries to affect the receiver. The focus here is on what? The receiver. And their emotions, their passion, their affection, the things they are affected by, their values in life. Okay. Who uses this kind? It could be used by anyone, by the way. But who uses this kind of proof? Mostly beggars. When you find them in the streets, may you enter paradise, may you get a good, beautiful wife, may whatever. They try to affect your emotions, your heart. They try to move you, to touch your feeling, to persuade you to give them something. Who else uses it? Poets. This is very common. This type of proof is very common in literature, especially by lyrical poets, poets who talk about their feelings and emotions and such things. This line is written by a poet. My students know, of course. This line is written by a poet in the 16th century. He loved a woman called Anne Boleyn, but unfortunately his beloved left him and married King Henry VIII. So he wrote a poem to her, and wilt thou leave me thus? Say nay, for shame, to save thee from the blame of all my grief and grame. Say nay, say nay. So he tries to affect her heart, her emotions, so that she may not leave him. So appeal to emotions is mostly used by whom? By writers of poetry, by poets. By who else? Children, when they want something, they try to affect your emotions, right? What else? Students, right? There's a student, whenever there's an exam or a test, his grandmother dies. In this university. His grandmother died tens of times, I don't know how many times. Why? Because he wants to affect the teacher emotionally so that he may give him another chance or pass him in the examination. So this kind of appeal is used by many people, but it is not rational, it's not logical, it's not factual, it's not reasonable. Why? Because it affects your emotions and you may do something that you don't like. It may also affect your value. Suppose that you are on TV, a very famous figure, very rich, and you always, in your speeches and in your writing, you say that I always care for humanity. I am a humanitarian person. I am ready to do anything to help the poor people. And you are alive on TV, and the presenter says, okay, you always say that, please donate $1 million for an orphanage, for example. So what does the presenter do? He tries to use his values, the values of the receiver, to make him donate. So this is called what? Trying to affect the values of what? Or affect the receiver through his or her values. Who else uses appeal to emotions? Let us see. Yes. Perhaps you may remember back in 2014, Scottish people were going for a national referendum, and the English people could not persuade them scientifically, factually, talking about political dangers, economic dangers. So this is what I appealed to Logos to convince you as my audience. Thank you very much.